think it's pretty fair to say that most builds that people play are designed to really lean in on meta, and they're not really designed for longevity. I like blowing my meta load as much as the next guy, but not too often does the D2 community talk about a build's stamina. So today, I would like to introduce you to a viable and fun PvE and PvP build, but because it garners its powers creatively by avoiding the obvious meta pick, this build will likely last you until the heat death of the Traveler. I won't just be covering this build's details overall. Lots of you have asked for my transmog, and listen, I know how sexy this looks. Like, damn, this was an accident and it looks so freaking good. So I'll cover that at the end of the video as well. The primary glue that holds this build together is the Wishkeeper. This new exotic can be obtained from an exotic quest, but even if you don't have this weapon, or perhaps you don't have the paid content to acquire it, you can still use a strand bow and you'll generally be okay. As a quick recap, and feel free to skip ahead to this time in the video if you don't want to hear about this bow's detail again, the Wishkeeper is a strand precision frame bow that generates stacks of Snare Weaver on precision hits and kills. This Snare Weaver can be used up at full stacks by firing a hip-fired shot, which creates an ensnaring trap on the ground, which will suspend targets who touch it. Also, suspended targets take bonus damage from this weapon. Besides a massive missed opportunity to call these suspending arrows Snaros, trademark, this weapon, even without crafting, is pretty good. Precision frame bows in PvP are the bane of lane-heavy maps, and any form of AoE crowd control is an almost universally helpful thing to have in PvE. Once fully upgraded and crafted, this weapon's real power begins to shine through, however. Its very last craftable upgrade grants this weapon Hatchling, which creates threadlings on kills. You can also drop its draw time and up its reload speed or handling for even more deadliness if you so choose. Alright, so we have a bow that can lock down areas and can create threadlings and suspend targets. Now, what do we do with that? The key to any successful forever build is to make something that seems innocuous into a bludgeon we can repeatedly beat our enemies over the heads with. Because this weapon can generate both threadlings and that suspending effect, a warlock is the perfect candidate to become our Sultan of Strand, forgive me. For both versions of this build, we use Verity's Brow. Just be glad we got something that worked for the transmog. Anyway, Verity's will grant you a 10-second period of death throws on kills that match your subclass. In both PvE and PvP, death throws increases grenade regeneration by 50% and damage by 20% per stack. In PvP, we will use this as a rapid cooldown for the ever-oppressive Threadling Grenade. Let's just ignore the quicker regeneration for a moment and look at the upper end of what a Threadling Verity's combo is really capable of. If we are able to get a decent string of kills on our Wishkeeper and get this up to 3 stacks of death throws, our heat-seeking Angry Jolly Ranchers go from a respectable maximum damage of 135 at 45 a pop to an absolutely disrespectful and disgraceful 216 damage at 72 a pop. But, of course, having such luck can be hard to come by in Crucible, especially if you're having to take a 3v1, it's likely you're not going to be surviving, and I agree. Our goal isn't to deal this freight train of damage in one go. In fact, if our whole build were to rely on this one gimmick, this build would be very bad. Threadlings can be avoided, whether that be from shooting them or just simply moving out of their range. Not to mention, at longer ranges, a Threadling may get distracted like an overenthusiastic puppy on a different enemy. Instead, this build is designed to only need 1 stack and only 1 Threadling to start committing war crimes. Because Wishkeeper is a precision frame, that means its headshot damage on a perfect draw is 150. And wouldn't you know it, on just 1 stack of death throws, our little green bean that could deals about 54 damage, practically guaranteeing a kill on any Guardian. This is the beauty of this simple setup. In most situations, we can secure kills on targets we didn't even have line of sight of. Any other damage from the Threadlings or from our Verity's stacks is just bonus, really. Not to mention, our allies will absolutely love us, as tossing a sentient lime-flavored frag grenade grants them a staggering 10 times increase in grenade regeneration if they are within 20 meters of us and we have death throws active. But How about those times your grenade is still on cooldown? For that, we have our Arcane Needle melee, dealing 68 damage in PvP, traveling at breakneck speeds on top of unraveling and auto-targeting. This melee is the punchline and our enemies are the joke, and we get 3 of them. Quickly tapping your melee button off of a headshot will all but guarantee a kill on the target if they don't immediately, and I mean immediately, jump back into cover. Once defeated, generic to all strand subclasses, you will create a tangle. Grab this tangle and throw it at the next target to deal 100 damage for a guaranteed body shot follow-up from your bow, all the while building stacks of Snare Weaver for our next Snare Trap. So that's the bread and butter, but let's talk some aspects and fragments and other weapon choices. I spent a lot of time going back and forth on which aspect I loved the most in PvP. I started with Weave Walk, and while it does give me a get out of jail free card, its restrictions on my fragment slots and its cost to my melee wasn't worth it. Mindspun Evocation also seemed like a smart choice, but because I lose my Threadling's bonus damage when they perch, this felt like just a flat waste. In the end, I landed on the Weaver's Call and, much to my surprise, the Wanderer. For my non-Warlock friends looking to give this a shot once this video is over, Weaver's Call deploys 3+ all currently perched Threadlings upon casting your Rift. This makes it a great defensive tool, as it's likely to have at least one of those Threadlings deal a bit of damage for a decent-ish chance at following up a headshot kill, assuming they're low-ish resilience. But even if they don't find a target, they'll come back and perch on you, which you can use later. The Wanderer is much more of an unusual choice for Crucible, as my Warlock mains can attest. This aspect will transform your tangles into what are effectively suspension bombs, still dealing the same amount of damage, but with the added benefit of a little suspension burst around it wherever they land. But one part of this aspect that gets overlooked is the last line, which reads that our Threadling kills will generate these tangles as well. Suddenly, the pieces are falling into place. All of the Threadling spam we are doing feeds into itself, creating a loop of bonus damage for our Wishkeeper to feast off of. For fragments, grab the Thread of Rebirth for even more Threadlings, Thread of Evolution for better Threadlings, Thread of Generation for, you guessed it, more Threadlings, and Thread of Mind to reward our suspension kills with a little bit of Rift energy. My backup weapon is hardly touched, as you can see from the gameplay here, so I decided to go for a quick draw 140 hand cannon in case I need to do some quick swap shenanigans to deal with more aggressive targets. There are only 3 mods I truly quote-unquote require for this build to work, and that's Ashes to Assets for faster supers, Fastball for longer range Threadling airstrikes, and Grenade Kickstart to further help out our grenade uptime. The rest of the build is up to your discretion, but for what I have outlined here, just remember to play this build at a distance. With that, you have a very fun to play PvP build, but I feel like the real power of this thing shines through in the PvE space. Wouldn't it be nice to be able to keep the Wishkeeper's bonus damage and suspending snares up permanently? Suspension is already strong enough, but no other weapon will give you free bonus damage on targets that effectively can't do anything in return. In PvE, this build can achieve that green nirvana, and we only need to swap over 2.5 items from our PvP subclass to make that happen. While Mindspun Evocation didn't provide us enough benefit in PvP, in PvE, where the enemies are much denser packed and easier to eliminate, it is unparalleled. Swapping our Weaver's Call for the Mindspun Invocation, then swapping our Threadling Grenade for a Shackle Grenade, we have just given ourselves a green Trinity Ghoul. Simply consume your grenade and start slaughtering, and the fireworks will follow. I just hope you like the color green. Suddenly, every kill suspends targets, which of course means free bonus damage for the Wishkeeper, and tangles to tack on even more damage on top of it. But if you wanted to take this a step further, swap out one of your fragments for the Thread of Wisdom. This will start showering you and your fire team in orbs, which all of my more experienced PvE players will know how to make far better, more abusive use of than I can. I think it's pretty telling that I completely forgot I had other weapons up until I had to DPS the boss while using this build. Because this build demands so little of you to make it really work, you are completely free to min-max every single other portion of your build to your fancy. Whether it's damage resistance mods or mods Charge of Light, it's yours for the taking. You don't even need your artifact mod to keep this pain train rolling, ensuring that even when the final shape drops, you can still use this build to its same power level. This is a forever build. This is my fashion, this is the subscribe and the like button. Bless your faces, and deuces.